Okay, this is a constructive criticism video made for Uberleth, a new user on the Mugen Fighters Guild forum. You can kind of think of this as a behind-the-scenes stage surgery video. I'm gonna go and remake this stage, and I'll give you visual examples of everything I'm gonna change and why. And while this is made for Uberleth, if anybody else wants to watch this video and take the advice I'm going to give him or them and learn from it, that's fine by me. That's great. If people get better at making stages, it only helps everyone in the end. So I'll go through everything on this stage that's wrong, objectively wrong for the most part, and not just my opinion, but I'll probably get into my opinion or superficial opinions near the end. Okay, so he made this Astro Boy Mega Factor from the Game Boy Advance stage, Metro City.
Fight.
Okay, first off, we see this intro here. Now, it looks kind of blurry. I have a suspicion that he took screen grabs from a YouTube video to make that animation. And so that will have to be replaced with clear art without all the noise that a video capture will get you. So straight up, that'll have to be replaced. But I also would advise putting the intro in your main version, because a lot of characters, they'll start attacking you before that intro would have even concluded. So if you're going against a difficult opponent in arcade mode, you definitely don't want to be blind while they're starting up their routine, or having to just block and hope for the best while that intro's still going on. So if you're going to include an intro like that, it should go off faster, or at least be attached to an alternate version of the stage rather than your main version of the stage. Okay, so I'm going to point out some things I noticed right off the bat. Okay, see this floor, this parallax floor he made? First off, if we watch Kung Fu Man's feet over there, we can see he's sliding. So there's a sliding floor. That's an obvious issue right off the bat. I'll show how to fix that when I get into remaking this. Also, Uberleth has the floor backwards. So when you have a perspective shot, going down a hallway, you've probably seen it in art class or something when you're growing up. It always gets narrower towards the top. He has it reversed. It's getting narrower towards the bottom, which is just kind of a distorted effect. It just looks weird and wrong because it's the opposite of how it should be. So that will have to be flipped as well and corrected. So he's got that backwards. Also, if you look really closely down here at these blue lights and this other stuff that's at the bottom of this parallax floor, that should probably be separated into a separate image so it looks like it's not just flat and it is the actual side of the floor. So yeah, I'll be separating that into two things and then realigning it so it also isn't broken. So that's another thing. Now, we're going to talk about some of the damage I see on the sprites. Okay, so if we jump up here, and if we watch the bottom of this background, we can see that everything is 1 pixel over down there. Everything has been distorted or misaligned, so everything is 1 pixel over more than it should be. It should be aligned perfectly. So that will have to be corrected. And also the delta on the background is pulling up so violently. It just looks like the stage is jumping in the background rather than an actual perspective of a delta. So we'll be putting some work into making the deltas look better. Okay, so also, I brought Gambi Old into this stage for a reason. Gambi Old is my jump dummy. He exists just for me to test bound highs. I basically gave him a stupid number of air jumps. Okay, so if you jump right here in the center, there's no exposed void problem at the top. But if you jump at the edge, you can see the black line of exposed void up there. You always gotta make sure your zoom, if you have a zoom stage, is pulled out completely before you start testing your sky, because that's the main time that it'll slip through the cracks. So yeah, don't test from the center, test from the edges. See, yep, no, yeah. Can't see the mistake? Can see the mistake. That's simple. Okay, so there's Astro Boy flying around in the background. He should be flying near the Sega sign in a second. Come on out. So when he has them flying behind the Sega sign or these buildings, oh, he's taking longer than I expected. Okay, so keeping scale in mind, for him to be that big, he'd be several stories tall. So like that would be a giant Astro Boy in the background. So if you're keeping scaling in mind, you got to kind of watch out for stuff like that. Another reason not to put Astro Boy in the background in general is if you had an Astro Boy character and you wanted to put him in the stage or assign him to the stage, you don't want a second copy of him flying around in the background that's gonna mess or conflict with the character you have assigned. So yeah, if you're gonna make like an Astro Boy flying around in the background, um, probably put that on an alt so you can have the regular version of the stage be able to accommodate any character, or especially just the Astro Boy character. So yeah, that's a no-no that we're going to try to avoid as well. Okay, now to get into the more technical stuff. Okay, here we have that image I was talking about, or the sprite that had a misalignment error. So you can see that he's flipped it right here, like the Gaia states, and then it's all upside down here. Now, you can also see that when he was flipping it, he didn't line it up perfectly. See, it's like it's 1 pixel over than it should be. So that also needs to be corrected. And one other thing, he has black as his transparency color. Do not do that. Here, turn the transparency color like bright pink or some color that is probably not going to be used and is easy to tell from the other figs. Now, instead of flipping it, we want to look for a pattern to repeat. Like, we can see that this light was about trying to repeat around here. But first, let me just wipe all this out of existence. Okay, there, it's wiped out of existence. Let's try this again. Now, what we want is patterns that we see naturally occurring in the image already. Okay, normally I would say like find the patterns that are naturally occurring and then reproduce them. But this stage is a little weird. Like these patterns don't really match up with each other. Like you'd expect like this block of three windows and would be repeated down here, but no, it's going like two and then three and then four, and like, but this one is going three, 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 and like I don't know, man. So to some extent, we're just gonna have to wing it, but still try to find the patterns best you can. Like in a lot of places, we can see that they're trying to repeat. Like right here, we know that like it's about to repeat those blue lights right there, or those windows and that shading right there. So like we know that that comes up next. And so I would take like the simpler ones or the easiest ones to predict and start with them first. You know, like take that. And most of the stuff is near the bottom of the screen anyway, so it's not going to be what people are paying attention to that much. So they won't notice it, like if the patterns start getting super like repeated. But yeah, then like, you know, paste that all the way down. So that'll stretch all the way to the bottom. Well, like this is one of the most complicated patterns I've seen in a while, to be fair, to reproduce all the way down to the ground. Once you find a pattern that works, I would grab that pattern like this and just line it up with the next one down. and just keep doing that until you hit the bottom. You also can, after you can hit copy and paste it so it gets bigger so you can get to the bottom faster. But yeah, just like find a little notch, make the pattern repeat. Like I said, I wish this one had a more natural pattern so it doesn't, it's gonna look very noticeable if you look back at it when I'm done because the pattern doesn't match with the top. But you can only do so much when the pattern is as unpredictable as the one that's used in this stage. Yeah, like when we look at it from afar, it's going to be noticeable that like it just like the top of the building is going to look very noticeable from this part, but like I said, there's not much you can do when it's not seeming to behave in a predictable way up top. This isn't part of the advice, but look at this. This is the official sprites found on like Spriter's resource. And like even the official artwork is like messed up. Like you can see up here, it's like got this like paneling alongside this building. And like down here, you can see that it's trying to be that upper part, but it just gets cut off of another part placed on top of it. Uh, so yeah, even the official sprite work is busted. So how am I supposed to like make it look perfect when the original thing is busted? It's dumb. Oh, that took longer than I wanted. Okay, so like I said, just bring it down. Hopefully most of this will be off screen, but yeah, I did my best to like bring the patterns down without mirroring. Now let's look at this one. First of all, he used yellow as this transparency color, which is much better than using black or white, so that's fine. I don't really need to mess with that. Once again, he's mirrored it. Instead of flipping it, he's just mirrored it to the side. And I can tell this building right here is unnatural. It's like the one that doesn't belong. So I looked at the official sprites, and you can never see more than like how this one's clipped off over here, which is kind of like the similar pattern, just flipped. I'm gonna go to where like the original sprites cut off, and I'm probably gonna grab like a building from like over here, and then put it so it's blocking that, and then I'll probably repeat the pattern from over here, or best I can, or maybe just move it around, some stuff around to extend it further out to the right. I probably could make it so it was like basically tiled, but we'll see. This probably shouldn't be much to fix. Also, another good reason not to mirror this is like if you're paying enough attention, you can see that the shines are like on the opposite sides of the building. Unless the sun is like in direct middle, that doesn't like make a hell of a lot of sense. Actually, it still wouldn't make sense. You'd need like two separate suns to make that lighting, like one on each end. So that's got to go. So I'll be fixing that next. I ended up going with a pattern that can be repeated easily with tiling. So that's that for that one. Okay, now that we've inserted those two sprites, now when I jump, like I can no longer see the misalignment at the bottom. And not so much as a reveal that can you really notice that the pattern gets kind of basic down there. And in the mid layer that I just made the tile perfectly is already set the tile, so that means that just maybe that if we would have paid so much close attention to the background, we could have seen that the tiling was broken before. But I fixed it already, so I don't see it now, of course. Next, I'm going to fix the parallax floor so it looks right. Okay, now that we have his parallax floor sprite here, we got a few issues with it. First off, it's pretty blurry. I don't know if he took footage from YouTube or whatever, or maybe he actually used some kind of blur filter on it after he blew it up. So that's one issue. This mirroring again, you can see the shadows are being cast in different ways. We want the shadows to be consistent, so all that will have to be remedied. Now, I tracked down an emulator sort of because the spriter's resource doesn't actually have the background or like the floor textures and stuff. So you can see all the sprites are, he did get that from somewhere that's actually matching up. But the top half of this like the main floor part. I don't know where he got this pattern from. However, even though I am going to try to fix it, I will try to stay true to his intention of this pattern. But there's another issue here, and a big one. This sprite has resize damage all over it. Now, when I say resize damage, what I mean is all the pixels, like when you're blowing them up like this, need to stay consistent. Like, so let's say this was a single pixel here, or maybe it's even 4, but then we have this like other thing that was probably a single pixel originally, but it doesn't match up to the next to it. Now, you want to maintain the integrity of the image, so if we do something like resize and then 125%, we have now distorted the pixels, like they don't match up anymore. Like this and this should have been the same distance, but now this one's like 3 wide and this one's only 2 wide. You can't let that happen. It's gotta it's always gotta be 1-to-1 increase. So like 200% will work. And back to normal. Now if we like resize and we go with 200. Now, even though it's blown up, the pixels are staying the same size as each other. You can't break this rule or your image is going to become warped. So, yeah, got to be careful of stuff like that. So when I recreate this, I'll take out all the resize damage and replace it with something new. I'm going to get some better footage of this ground here. And then I'm going to recreate it, and then we'll be splitting it into 2 images to do the next trick to make it look even better. Okay, I made my own version of his parallax floor sprite. You can see it at the top here. It's not a perfect match to this, but I did try to keep it in the spirit of his. I used the undamaged sprites from the source game. The source game is actually kind of bad about its sprites. Like, it was kind of choppy, the work. Like, these bottoms of these shadows are, like, cut off a lot in the source game itself. So I'm gonna, like, knock Sega or whoever sprited that game for that one. Once again, I don't know where he got with this top. Like I said before, we're going to separate this into 2 images to achieve an effect that we want in a bit. So yeah, the bottom part is now going to be its own separate thing. We'll get back to this in a second once I'm ready. And I'll talk about how to making the floor not slide next. As you can see, it's not tiled yet. And since I changed it, it's now, we can't even see around the bottom side. So there's 2 different ways I can handle that. One, I can just add more zoom, which is what I'm going to temporarily do. Then I'm going to show you the other option. But first, let's get this floor tiled and moved. Okay, so here's the associated floor code. You can see it's a parallax. It's the correct sprite. You know, if you're editing a stage yourself, you can hunt down the sprite. See the sprite number here. It's like 10, and then that'll help you find the code you're looking for. So like look for the sprite 10. This isn't for Uberleth specifically on this one. I'm sure he knows this part. Okay, so he's got a bunch of code here that we're going to just take out, honestly. So we're going to take out the X scale, the Y scale, and probably going to take out the scale start too. Now, instead, we're going to use width the code. So width code is something you can use with parallax. And if you type in like this first number here, the 100, let me make the numbers different so it's less confusing. That's the top line of your image. And the second number here is the bottom line. So if we were to look at this sprite here, we can tell that it's 1,728 pixels long. Now, on a lot of things, when we're not trying to pull off the effect we're about to pull off, I would suggest that the first number match the width, and then the second number would be even bigger. The first number has always got to be smaller than the second number, otherwise it's going to look warped in reverse like it currently does. Because if the top isn't smaller than the bottom, then it's not going to look like it's narrowing into the distance, and it's going to lack that depth. So just for example here, we're going to use 1700, and then we're going to just let's throw 3000 on there. That's not what I'm going to end up with. I'm just using this as an example. And we can now see that the floor is no longer inverted. It's got the better sense of depth than it used to. Once again, I told you I was going to disable the zoom so you can accomplish something. You kind of want your character standing in mostly the center of your parallax floor. So I'm going to tile it so you can see it's not tiled. It's not going all the way to the left and right. It's not repeating. I made it so it can repeat perfectly. I'll enable that in a second. Also, I'm going to move it up ever so slightly to match what I just said to get it in the center of our character's walking path. Okay, changing the start to 574 instead of 644 will bring us up pretty much to dead center like we want. Then we add tile equals 1, 0. That means tile is enabled on horizontal but disabled on vertical. So yeah, that 0 means it would be the vertical value, so it's not tiling upwards. This would be tiling left and right. You do not have to worry about tile spacing when you're not using an animation. As long as that code's right, it will do it correctly. Animations are different. Maybe he already knows this, but now let's check the result. Okay, as we can see now, the floor has been moved up, so the characters are now in the dead center of it, or close to it at least, because you can see that little mark where the little stitch mark where it's coming together. And now it goes all the way to the left and right like we want. However, there's still some issues that I know are going to pop up, but I'm showing you problem solving on purpose. Okay, so remember that thing we cut out? We're going to slide it beneath this. Okay, so for the sake of ease, I would suggest taking the code that's closest to it, which would be the floor code that we already just used. And since, so yeah, that's the next sprite up. That's where I assigned it. Now this one isn't going to be parallax. It's just going to be a normal sprite. And so all this doesn't need to have whip code, doesn't need any of this. It's just a normal sprite. And I already know the correct answer for where you need to start it, but I would suggest you hunt around for the right spot on your own, no matter how many times it takes you to try to get it just perfect. So it's 760 if I remember correctly. So we're going to put that in, I'm going to show it, and we're going to show you the problems we still have. Okay, now that that code's been implemented, we can now see that it hangs below the stage. It now is supposed to give the visual effect of being like a flat edge to into the floor. However, we still have some issues. Like, first off, you can see that it's clearly not synced to that. Now, remember when I said that you need the first number to be smaller and the second number to be bigger? Well, in order for this to sync properly to the floor, we actually need to match the width of the floor, the front that we just made. So if there isn't such a front, I would suggest, like I said, to use the actual sprite width of your parallax floor as the top line. But since we need to match it to the bottom line has to be what we said. It has to match. So yeah, the width of this and your bottom line have to match. Okay, back to this screen. And since we cut this in half from the same image, we know that they're both the same width. So we know that it's 1728. That is the actual width the bottom needs to be to match the this sprite. And if we cut a fourth of that number, 1728, let's cut like 25% off the start number. So it's going like 25% narrowing into the horizon. So that would be 1296. Okay, so now that that's implemented, as long as we're not fucking with the deltas, it kind of stays in sync. But we'll still need to do some more work here. Okay, so now the next issue is, as you can tell, I've zoomed the hell out of the screen. How much of the floor front do we want to be visible, and how much of, like, where do we want the top line of this to be? How can we get the best of both worlds? Well, I'll tell you straight up that we can't do anything scale-wise to the front edge here. If we try to mess with that, it's just not going to look right. So we have to do a little trick here on the parallax floor. Okay, let's restore his intended start position now. Let's set it back to 644 like he wanted. Now we're going to add new stale start code. For those who don't know, scale start is the internal scaling thing from Yugen. I try not to use it too much, but it is helpful in certain situations, and you have to do it sometimes with parallax floors. So the first number here is horizontal scaling. We want that to remain the same. You don't want to mess with that. But vertical scaling here, let's set this to 0.6, so it's only like 60% of what it should be. Okay, so this is at his original thing, or his original position, and which of his original zoom restored. But as we can see, it probably still needs to come up some, or it needs to be narrowed even more with scale start. However, even if we set it to like scale start 0.3, it still comes up rather short. I think there's really just no choice, and we still can't see that much under the stage to see the front that we want to implement. So there ain't much choice here but to just move this up further than he had it originally. So I'm going to move things into position now to accommodate what we want to do. Okay, it's now set to start 0614 and 0.5 vertical. Okay, so this has his default zoom that he had. And we now have a decent amount that we can see the front edge if we want to when zoomed out. Now we just need to slide up that front edge to match the new border at the bottom. Okay, this is what it looks like with the floor slit up on the front edge. Unfortunately, we still can't see that much of the front edge. And the only solution to that is to straight up move the Z offset of the Kung Fu Man, or, the player characters. Or increase the zoom so we can see more. I'll deal with that in a bit, but next we're going to solve the sliding floor problem. Okay, so back to the coding. Okay, so whenever you have a floor in Mugen, it needs pretty much without fail to be 1, 1. So let's set both these floors to 1, 1. Now, unfortunately, if you do parallax, that ain't gonna fly. You actually need to do quite a bit more. But if you have any number, like if you have like 2 instead of 1 here on the vertical, you're gonna have a sinking character. But so that's not what we want. However, so like I just set these to 1, 1. Let me show you what it looks like now. Okay, now you can see the characters aren't sinking through the floor anymore when they jump. So yeah, they're good that way, but they're still sliding like crazy. And that's due to the parallax's whip thing. There's a really complicated for me. There's a formula out there that you can look up that shows you how to calculate like what delta your parallax floor should be. But I'm going to assume for the sake of argument that that formula makes no sense to you. So I'm going to just show you the hard way to figure it out, or the manual way to figure out what your delta should be for your parallax floor. And I want you to position like player 2 Kung Fu Man on something on the textured floor that you can mark his foot. So like this big like thing that looks like a Roman numeral 1. Let's try to get his foot on that blue line there. Now we'll watch to see if he pulls left or right. So he's pulling left. He just slid off to the left. So yeah, like when we lock left, he slides left. Okay, to get this right, it's the horizontal delta we want to mess with. The vertical one stays solid. It stays 1. So let's try out delta 2, for example. Okay, so this is what happens on horizontal delta 2. Now he's really sliding to the left. Now sometimes you'll enter like delta 2 and he'll start sliding in the other direction to the right. Okay, so we know that putting 2 in didn't make him slide to the right. So let's try point 1. Okay, so now when I walk left, he starts sliding off to the right. So from this information, we can deduce that the correct delta is somewhere between point 1 and 1. Sometimes it's above 1, depending on the deltas. The correct thing, that's why I always try 2 first, to see if like he goes right or starts going there. We want to make sure he's not sliding at all. So ideally, we're hunting for the point like right before he starts sliding in the other direction. So let's just try out some numbers. Okay, this is 0.5 test. Okay, this is 0.5. He's still sliding to the right, meaning it must be above 0.5 but before 1. Try 0.8 next. Okay, so this is 0.8, and it's really close to being right. You can see he's barely moving to the right off that blue line that he's standing on. Okay, we're now trying 0.9. Okay, here we go, 0.9. Oh, he's moving to the left again, so now we know that it's between 0.8 and 0.9. And next we're trying 0.85. Okay, so this is 0.85, and we can see that it is almost damn near dead on. Like I said, there's a proper way to calculate this, but that's I just showed you like the manual just hunting for it method. Now, one last little note about this. While 8.5 seems to work, it could be 8.4, it could be 8.6 that could get you a better result. But there's also, and I don't think a lot of people know this, Mugen accepts a lot more number places than you'd think. So, like, that's probably even still valid, that, like, 851211. Like, it'll accept that precision if you need it. But let's just leave it at 8.5 for the sake of argument for this, so I can move on to the next thing. Okay, so next we're going to be syncing the floor front edge to it so it looks perfect. Now, when we do this, we're going to temporarily disable the tiling to help us match it. So the tiling has got to go off on both of these. Okay, now that we have the tiling turned off, we can see where the sprites begin and end, like officially. We need to line up first. We need to line up this with the bottom of this. So let me hunt around and find out the correct number. Okay, so this is what it looks like when it's properly slid onto there. At least for the most part. It is really hard to tell. It's so fine a point of these pixels because these sprites are so big. But, so yeah, now we slotted under there. But we still have the issue that it's not synced properly. Now we can see that the top is sliding off and is not synced to the bottom. And the reason I undid the tiling is because it would be really hard, so hard, to like really tell where it needs to touch at the very ends if we had it tiled while we're trying to fix this. So now I'm going to try to increase the delta till we find the correct number. It'll be very similar to what we did to make the floor stop sliding. except this time it's almost always a number above 1 because it's near the camera. So like, how deltas in the background are smaller numbers, well, the front of this is almost always more than 1. So I'm just going to hunt around for the number and find it on my own, and then I'll tell you what it is to give an example. But it's the exact same method we used last time until we just get it right. Okay, so now I've set it to 1.13. And now we can see that it's hugging that sink pretty damn well. Now, it might be like even better if I like try to get it like in the, even more number places. But drift like that will be more noticeable the wider you make your stage. Like if I walked even further and further left, maybe we'd start to see a noticeable drift. But I think once I add the tiling back in, this is still going to look pretty damn synced well. So that's all dealing with the floor. Now I'm going to deal with some other element, probably the intro next. Okay, so first off, there's two issues right off the bat. First, there's sprite overkill here. Like, look how many sprites he has dedicated to this. A ton. Now, all we really need is the brightest sprite and the slowly darkening to full black, and how many sprites we need to accomplish that. And when we do like an animation, all you need to do would be like as soon as you hit, like you start on the black sprite, and then you do whatever sprite you need to the bright one, and then in the next thing you just use the animation numbers that go back all the way back to black, instead of actually inserting more sprites to accomplish it that are redundant. This isn't a big deal on like 8-bit pictures, but let's say you were using 32-bit pictures. That'll just start skyrocketing the file size. So we want to be economical with our sprites, or at least try to be, if we can help it. Okay, so like the next problem with these sprites is, once again, I think he took YouTube footage or something. It's like way more blurry than it ever should be. But thankfully, I've already found the sprites on Spriter's resource for this. And, though I could have just ripped them myself now that I went and got the Game Boy Advance emulator. So we're going to be swapping out the sprite. But there's like 3 separate methods to pulling off this darkening effect and keeping your resources low. I'll go for each method, or at least I'll try to, and then you all can decide which method you like the best when you're doing this in the future. Okay, the first method is going to be the hardest one, and I don't recommend it for this project, but I'm going to go for each method, so regardless. So I've already replaced the sprite with the actual accurate image. For this, I would absolutely recommend using like Mugen's internal scaling thing instead of trying to resize this. It'll probably just make it look worse because it's pretty grainy. I don't know. I'm gonna use resize for when I actually do it, but that's not part of this method. So first we take, this is the brightest image here. So in this, we just copy the image to get our next image, and then we go to Edit Palette, and we take color, we go into a color, and we like do something like we see it's like 21.2 lumens, and we make it 19 lumens now. Now the problem is, the reason you would want to do this is it gives you the most control. The reason you don't want to do this is with like, if you go to like count image colors here, that's 182 colors you got to manually bring down. And you'd have to repeat the feat until you got it to pure black. So that's a lot of work. I tend to use this method, but I also probably wouldn't do it with something with this many colors. When I want to manually darken something like really quickly for frames of an animation. So yeah, you get the most control because you're absolutely deciding the colors. But like that is such a grind, so I'm gonna say method 1 is out for this project. Okay, the second method. Okay, similar to the first one, we're gonna take the image, copy it into a new one. So I've already decreased this to 8-bit and made the transparency color, like everything to that effect already. And we need our imaging program to do this. We need to find brightness and contrast. Let's go with -10. And it got 10 darker. And it already, if we go into the palette, it already applied it to all the things. So this is, it's not quite as controlled as the last one, but you won't go insane doing this one. So yeah, then we take the one we just darkened and we copy and we paste it again. And we go to brightness again. And we -10 again. But you might want to go harder than -10 if you want to get this done in a reasonable amount of frames, or you may want to keep it to a low numbers if you want to make the animation seem smoother. But so yeah, just keep like copy the next one over. Ah. And just keep doing it till it gets total black, and then you'll insert all the frames from like black to bright and then bright back to black in your animation file, and it should work out just fine. So that's method 2. Okay, the third method, we're going to take our picture here, we're going to copy it, we're going to paste it, and then we're going to completely black it out. So yeah, now it's a complete solid black block that's exactly the same size as our source image, which is the important part. Because we're going to use this in an overlay to make a transparency effect that will cause a fade in and a fade out to replicate the darkening from your animation. Okay, taking a look at the original animation, there's something I wanted to point out. At the end here, you have the time going to, 59,900. You don't need to do that. You can do 2 separate things. You can just push -1 and then it'll stop on that frame and never repeat. Or you can put any number here like 10 and then put start loop in frame. Either way will guarantee it won't loop. And it'll work it'll work better than putting an absurdly large number there trying to hope it won't loop. Okay, so now the example of the thing. So yeah, here's the thing. I got the time is 510. The overlay time total is 510. And to achieve this effect, all I did was go to transparency addition and started it at 0 and jumped 10 every frame. So do all the way up to 250, and then it went right back down. And it needs to match the other time. Now I know in your original animation, at the end here you have like this effect of where it transitions back out into nothing. Now you can keep that, you just need to put it at the end of the blackout test here. So after the 510, then you enter those frames of animation that you had before, and you make sure that this times out and then has like, a dead frame at the end that syncs to the time. And it should work out just well. I'm going to implement it anyway, and then you can just check it out in the file yourself to see how I did it. The intro takes like too long, so I'm going to have it go by faster. Like I said, if you have an aggressive character, they'll start beating the crap out of you long before that intro is over. So you can't have it be that long. Okay, going back into the stage, just to demo this.
Round 1. Fight.
So this intro fading in and out, that's been accomplished with just two sprites. One black sprite and the image sprite. Okay, refresher on what I'm mad about on the deltas. I'm not really mad, I'm joking. So like right now, it's pulling up so violently, it just kind of looks like the buildings are hopping up with me rather than an illusion of depth when going up. Your horizontal deltas are like way more important than vertical deltas. I feel like vertical deltas just get messed up a lot, so we need to really like tone down that. And also the buildings in the background have this like effect. It looks like they're moving in two separate directions the way they currently are. Like I could maybe see like the logic of that working, but we need to tone down that effect as well. And there's two schools of thought on like the far background. You can see like it's not really moving at all. Like it must be delta like 1 or something. And one school of thought is far off backgrounds like that should be stationary, but the latter school is they should be a delta just like everything else. Otherwise, it looks wrong. I am of the latter opinion. I feel like if like one of the deltas in the back is like stationary, it just makes everything else look off. So I'm gonna one by one reset all these deltas, and first we have to decide what's closest to the camera, and that green flying car is apparently the answer. So we'll be going like since the floors have to be always be one like 1 1. The next thing up should be like 9 at something at best. And we shouldn't be jumping like too hard from like the first one to the back, otherwise we don't have much room to grow. So, let's take a look at it, see what's actually there. Okay, time to start wrapping things up here. So some loose ends here. If we're gonna keep Astro in the stage, we need to take him and from where he currently is, and let's put him just under the intro. That way he'll be in front of the buildings and he won't look like he's 2 stories tall. You also could use scaling to make him look closer to the camera or control how close he looks. By the way, I'm pretty sure this sprite priority line here is completely unnecessary. All you have to do is make whatever you want closer to the camera further down the list. So like Astro's going to appear above the floor if he was in front of it. So let's just take out the sprite priority. Yeah, so that should fix the Astro problem. Next, I'll be fixing the deltas. Okay, now I've got to look at this. Okay, so first of all, like 12-1 is the car that's closest to the camera. I mean, maybe it's 12-0, but like all the cars are coded at the same distance, like 0.30. Remember, the smaller the number, the further away it is. But the big issue here is that you've got some of the buildings in the background closer to the camera than the cars that are in front of them. Like you got buildings at 75 and you got cars at 30. The cars are in front of the buildings. They need to be like 90 or something, not 30. So yeah, like I gotta reorder this, but like all the cars in the correct order because you have a car that's smaller than the green car in front of the green car with the same delta number. So like yeah, so gotta reorder everything in here. Remember, further down the list is automatically the sprite priority. You don't need to worry about sprite priority. Just put it further down the list. It's like Astro is above the floor, and the floor is above the other floor. The floor is above that car 6 there, 12-3, and that would be in front of that. That's all you have to do is just put stuff in order. I'm not even sure that sprite priority code even works, but I haven't really tried it before, to be honest. So that's going to be a shortcoming of me, but I've never even seen it inside a file before. I've edited tons of files. Okay, so I'm gonna reorder all this. Okay, so this is what it looks like after I've reset all the deltas. As you can see now, when we move right, all the buildings move right. And we move left, all the buildings are moving left. It looks so much better that way. It looks like the buildings aren't like, moving against each other, which is bad. Okay, and when I was resetting the delta, I didn't even mean to, but I managed to cover up that hole in the sky too. So that was going to be my next on my agenda, but guess I don't have to worry about it anymore. Now, with these new deltas, I guess you could change the bound high to go up a little more, probably, and get a couple more pixels out of it. Uh, and probably with some tiling, you could probably extend your zoom to see a little more. You could also bring the buildings up, so when you jump, you could see more of it by default. But hell, all that work I spent extending the bottom of the building wasn't really necessary. But yeah, like Astro Boy's in front now. I also moved this like light blue car in front because it was behind the buildings, and it was causing the same problem as Astro Boy. Like the car to be behind those buildings and still be that size would have meant the car was several stories high. So yeah, the car's now in front of the buildings. Um, I'm gonna show off what the deltas look like inside the file, and then I'm gonna get into some really pedantic stuff. Okay, this assumes like Astro Boy is the closest to the camera, so I gave him like 0.95, and then like the next car up was like 0.8, 0.9, so it's just like it just dropped 5 points, and then another 5 points for the next car that size down, and yeah, that other car is the same size as that car, so it got the same number. And then the next car size down is another 5 point drop. Then I just dropped the full 10 points for that next building row. Same thing for the next building row after that, and after that, and after that. And that's pretty much it, and it works pretty well. Now to get into some really dumb, pedantic stuff that's just my opinion, man, and not really like objective facts. First off, the sound, you need to put your MP3s in the sound folder. Because people, they're not even going to look when they like get your file unzipped. They're just going to immediately dump your MP3 in the sound folder. They're not going to check to see if that you secretly assigned it to the stages folder. So like right off the bat, just be nice to people and use the sound folder. It's there for a reason. And this is like once again just my opinion. It really helps to have your like file names like very specific. So like you don't want to go into your sound folder and just like be looking at a bunch of stuff that has like very generic names and have no idea what the hell you're looking at. So yeah, you want to like, do your best to like name the files in a convenient way so people can just like easily know what it is. And if you're worried about like, too many things having similar names, you can go like Astro Boy and then parentheses Omega Factor so we know it's the Omega Factor Astro Boy as compared to whatever else Astro Boy media there might be. Just dumb stuff like that. And this isn't too much of a problem. This name isn't too bad. But a lot of people like put pretty generic names on their stuff. Like back in the day, I swear I had like 10 different temples and 10 different dojos because people would just name their file. They'd be like dojo.def, and then another creator, and they'd also put dojo.def. And so you'd have to sit there and like manually rename everything, and it's just kind of like a shame. And once again, you just kind of want to be specific. So I would honestly, this is kind of just once again my opinion. Give yourself some sort of like author signature in front of the file. So like UL for Uberleth, Metro City, like just dumb stuff like that. Just so all your files will be next to each other and easily found when you're scrolling through the list and won't be confused with somebody else's Metro City stage, if that even exists. Dumb stuff like that. I'm going to do a couple more tweaks to the stage, then I'm going to release a few different versions of it. One of them without Astro Boy in the background, and another that doesn't have the intro starting at the start. And then I'll put those in a folder, I'll release them, and we'll be done.